The Karate Kid reboot series Cobra Kai has been full of callbacks and references that have fans filled with nostalgia every time they watch an episode. However, Season 5 may have had the most references to the original Karate Kid films we have seen in a single season, and in today's video, we're going to break down our favorite callbacks in the 5th season. The first reference that we loved was the Aviators making their return. Yes, the circumstances in which they were finally brought back out may not have been great for fans, but then again, the circumstances in which they were brought out in the original film weren't ideal either. In the first Karate Kid film, Daniel gets his butt kicked by some of the bullies in his high school, and rather than showing off his black eye to his mom and his classmates, he decides to wear a pair of straight-out of Top Gun aviator glasses. Sure, they covered up his black eye, but they didn't do a very subtle job. Well, it wasn't any more subtle the next time around, as Daniel was forced to don the signature shades once again after he got a few battle scars after a tussle with Terry Silver. While it was cool to see that call back to the original movie, it was hard to watch Daniel have to sink that low again. Over the course of the series, Daniel has been very strong and confident like he always tried to be in the original film trilogy, but the second he put on these glasses and refused to leave his house, he was right back to that time in which he had to hide his pain and embarrassment from his mom and his peers. Luckily, his friends got him out of the depression he was in and got him to finally leave his house, not without his glasses, of course. Maybe one day we can see him wear these glasses without the circumstances having to be so dire for LaRusso and the audience. Next up, the long-awaited return of Mike Barnes. Barnes was one of the antagonists in the third Karate Kid movie and was played by Sean Kanan, a future soap opera star at the time of the third Karate Kid film. Cobra Kai has made its money via character cameos and returns. People love to see classic villains like Chozen and Johnny Lawrence make their impact on the show, along with characters like Daniel's mother Lucille and Allie with an eye. It is the characters from the past that make people want to watch this show. So people who loved the original trilogy of Karate Kid's films were curious when they didn't see Mike Barnes appear when Terry Silvers made his appearance on the show. But fans didn't have to wait too long, as Barnes finally made his long-awaited debut on Cobra Kai in Season 5. His cameo was limited to only 3 episodes, and was also revealed that at the time that he no longer does karate and spends his days as the owner of a furniture shop. While it seemed like he was totally done with karate, the events of his cameo see him eventually team up with Johnny Lawrence and Chozen to take down Mike's old sensei, Terry Silver. While his appearance in the show was maybe not what fans expected, it was still cool to see Barnes come back into the lore of the Karate Kid series. He was a pretty substantial piece of the third film, and it would have been a shame for him to not make at least a single cameo in this show. Next up, the death of the innocent Bonsai Trees. I'm sure all of you know what a bonsai tree is because of its appearance in the Karate Kid series. The small but elegant tree is incredibly unique, so much so that it drew in Daniel LaRusso to see what Mr. Miyagi was doing, which of course eventually sparked their student-teacher relationship. The tree made such an impact on Daniel that he and Mr. Miyagi started a business selling bonsai trees. But if you remember, part of the plot of the third film was Terry Silver's deliberate attacks on Daniel and Mr. Miyagi's trees that drove Daniel to be so angry at Silver. But it appears as though nothing has changed in the 30 years between the events of the third film and the 5th season of the Cobra Kai series, as Silver was right back to his old tricks. In the 5th season, there is a scene in which Daniel is auctioning off some bonsai trees and gives the proceeds to charity. However, the winning bid in the auction happens to be in front of none other than Mr. Silver, and of course, he destroys the trees just like he did in the third film. While it was supposed to be a sad scene in which the villain gained some ground on the hero, however, it was hard for us not to have a little chuckle as we watched Silver pick up right where he left off. You would think that if you were having a charitable auction, you would find a way to make sure that one of your mortal enemies can't bid on the items or attend the event at all for that matter, but what do we know, right? Next up, that one stupid kick. The entire Karate Kid image is derived from the crane kick that Daniel pulled off in 1984 All-Valley Tournament, and with good reason. I mean, sure, it was absolutely illegal, but it was also the most badass thing that happened in the entire year of 1984. I mean, the stakes, the delivery, the dominance, the result, all of it. It is one of the most iconic movie moments in history, and it is certainly etched into film history forever. The kick has been mentioned on the show multiple times, but not as often as it is referenced by Johnny Lawrence, the guy on the receiving end of the iconic kick, but that all changed in Season 5. There is a scene in which Johnny is talking to Chozen, another former opponent and victim of Daniel LaRusso, in which he admits that the kick has stuck with him for longer than he would like to admit. My whole life was haunted by one stupid kick. Of course, it would have been difficult for him to return to his sensei, John Kreese, who of course added to the pain that he had to endure that day following the events of the Karate Kid film. While Lawrence hasn't referenced the kick too often on the show, it clearly has stuck with him forever. I mean, literally every decision he has ever made has been justified from the result of that kick and that fight. It was was the single event that drove the rest of his life, so how would he not be able to think about it, right? It was cool to get his perspective on that moment, as even after some healing and some repaired bridges on all sides, it clearly is still digging away at him. Maybe not as much as it was prior to the beginning of the Cobra Kai series, but still with him nonetheless. Next up on our list is pain does not exist. Throughout the series, the creators love to throw in little Easter eggs in the form of quotes, but one of the coolest and most obvious ones in the entire series was in the latest season. I'm sure all of you watching this are very familiar with the first film and the antagonist's dojo, Cobra Kai. In that dojo, Sensei John Kreese had a very militaristic mentality and a very toxic environment. That toxic environment was of course topped off by Sensei Kreese's signature catchphrase, "No mercy." But it was another phrase of his that was highlighted in the 5th season of Cobra Kai by the new sensei of the Snake Dojo, Kim Da-eun. Da-eun mentions to her student that pain does not exist, which of course is a direct callback to one of Kreese's lines in the original movie, in which he says, "Fear does not exist in this dojo, does it? Pain does not exist in this dojo, does it? Defeat does not exist in this dojo, does it?" While both of these lines are undeniably cool, the original is pretty scary. While it is different this time around in the Cobra Kai series, it is still scary, just in a different way. Of course, seeing Enni Sensei acting even remotely like John Kreese did in the 80s should be scary, as he was a truly terrifying man. Of course, the Snakes are trying to use the same mentality that John did back in his heyday, as they believe that being unmerciful and calculating is the best way to succeed in both karate and life. While we have seen that that sort of mentality never works out for those sorts of people, especially in the Karate Kid universe, we know that they will have to learn that lesson for themselves over the duration of the show. That's all we have for you guys on the channel today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the content, and we will see you all in the next video.